libertarian, movement to kind of be a part of the protected class. There's less than 1%. Like, I think it's less than half of a percent of people. Why would they try to shape and mold society around that? It just doesn't make sense. And you know what, Jonathan? This is beyond partisanship. This is more of common sense. I mean, we as parents are that's the common denominator. We have to have the principles to say what our children are allowed to learn in school versus what I can, if it comes up as a question, that I can be a part of that conversation with them. But right now, they don't even have the option to opt out. That's a problem. I mean, do you not agree?
I believe
That's a
that first and
problem. I mean,
foremost,
do you
you
not
know,
agree?
beyond teaching the terms and what they mean, okay, I don't think they should go beyond teaching the terms. Okay,
Why do they need to teach those terms? Hell, you got kids don't even know what the word work means. Why don't we teach them basic? Hey, what does math mean? I bet you I could take 10 kids geography. So our school system's failing. Why would you give teachers another thing to teach when they're having trouble teaching the shit they were hired to teach?
it sounds grand. That sounds good. It sounds like a stump speech, and I get it. You know what I'm saying? But that's not reality.
What are you saying? Short? You saying I'm short? What are you saying?
No,
Why do I
no,
need a
a
stump?
stump speech is like when you're on a campaign trail, Grant. When you're out on it, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, on the campaign trail, stomping for votes. Okay,
See, that's how simple I am. I don't even know a stump speech. I normally take a big stage.
Now we get to some hands and see what everybody else thinks about this. Or do
We
y'all
got
want
a
to
bunch of
duke it
other hands
out?
up, have been up for a long time. We got Zan that's been up, Cat
Yep.
Black, and Nathan have been up for too long. I'm worried they could dislocate their shoulders. Their hands have been up so long.
I know, right? Yeah, I want to tap in with Dan. Thank you for being patient, everyone. Go ahead, Dan, jump in.
Thank you. I just want to remind that for whatever the technology doubles, for whatever the technological revolution progress, but our body's volume will not change much. Now, secondly, our eyes resolution it will stay the same, and our ear, by listening to the voice, is still analog. I just want to go back to the fundamental. This will never. I probably will say will never change. And so this is the one point. Second point that I want to say is that supposingly that I'm talking about New York City right now. The the, the man, let's say using Manhattan as example. At 9/11, I was there, and the I'm talking about the entire street. It's the car. There's no cars. That implying that most people do not actually live. Most people in the city do not actually have a car. I mean, they all live in Queens, Brooklyn, somewhere else. So what I'm trying, I will make my point later. What I'm trying to say, if we imagining 300 years ago, there's an earthquake. There was an earthquake in New York City. I would imagine maybe the population at that time will be literally zero, close to zero. Then nobody's gonna die. But if it happen now, I know that New York City is not going to be have earthquake, but imagining if there are, I'm talking about at least 10,000 people have to die. This is because I'm trying to say is that okay, this is the fact, right? I'm going to go on to do this in the Wall Street area. If you talk about the financial district, supposing there is like some kind of emergency, everybody have to get out of their apartment and go down to the street. I I can be sure the street will be packed, and there will be no space. There will be, I would say, if everybody come down, the volume of people they stack in there, they have to leave their apartment. They will be packed completely. Nobody can move.
Where are you
And
going with that?
say that again. Hello.
I said
I
I'm
think,
trying to figure out. I'm trying to follow you, but like,
yeah, okay, 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 okay. What I'm trying to say is that the physical space geometry is the sign. It's actually telling us, indeed, the space is limited. We could double everything, the knowledge, everything, but we cannot double the Earth. That's the limited.
okay,
Yeah,
yes,
and
land is finite, and yes, there we do take
and,
up
and
this.
so if somebody that they want to say
Damn,
that they
damn,
want to,
damn, 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 my bro. Well, what are you talking about, bro?
when I'm trying to talk about the
I'm confused,
technology,
man.
yeah, okay. I'm only talking about maybe there's no emergency, maybe there's no war, maybe nothing emergency happened. Yes, we can double our population. We can. I'm not saying to depopulation. I'm only saying that a city like New York, right, is they need support from New Jersey, from Queens, from Brooklyn, from Connecticut. Without them, city of New York will not going to be function. And
Yeah,
my point, I think my point is that is at this point that it is responding to people who were saying the technology is doubling whatever years, and your wealth will double. I highly doubt about that. Even though your money maybe is doubled, but your actual spending power isn't probably stay the same mostly. And I'm saying that we are very vulnerable if there's an emergency, if there's a war. I think that my point is this. But other than that, maybe we're okay. Yeah.
thank you, Dan. You know, Dan spoke in a space the other day, and he told us about we were kind of there was a debate about how communist is China, and I really loved his perspective. It definitely, when expressed from someone who's been there that knows, the whole history of it, it does make you appreciate where we are. No joke. Like that's something that I still to this day want to thank you for, Dan, because it was very valuable for me.
Oh, you love this perspective then, but you don't love it now, right?
What do you mean?
No, no, I didn't know. And I okay. Can I talk a little bit about China? Right? Just one. I
Oh,
want to make only one point. Only one point. Right? Just one point.
it's up to Mace. Mace.
One important reason is that we cannot compete with the price with the Chinese product. Maybe that is probably somewhere, but I can be sure that. I mean, some manufacturer owner told me that they don't make any money. They whatever their cost, as long as they can export to United States, and the government will give them the money. At that time, that I'm talking maybe 10 years ago, that was 17%. They make 17% for whatever they export. I don't know. Maybe right now is lower. I'm talking about the government is involved with all of this. It's not a fair trade. It's not a fair competition. And I hope that I mean this is the fact.
Yeah, you landed that time. Thank
Yeah.
you. That makes sense. I appreciate you, Dan. Storm, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I was getting back to the point with that Jonathan was making without the hair. And I was thinking, I don't think we're complaining about America. I think where we live right now in the present is the best country in the world. However, it doesn't mean it's going to stay like that. And you're going to have a momentum or a trend, either upward or downward, right? And somebody mentioned we're in a downward spiral. There are things that we are focused on right now that have gotten our attention that have nothing to do with making the country an amazing country in the future. We're talking about things that really don't matter. They're petty. So I think about somebody or somewhere like Dubai, right? Dubai, if you ever look at the way that progressed so quickly, is because it started from nothing out in the middle of a desert. And, they decided to build a city, and part of that city being over the water. So they continued to invest and invest and invest. And it's the same thing as New York City. When New York City wasn't here, it went from the ground up. And then all of a sudden, all these buildings started coming up, and it became the best place to live. New York City is not the best place in the world to live anymore. If you look at the choice between New York City and Dubai, people would much rather live more likely in Dubai than they would in New York City. So if you look at America, we might have a net migration in right now, but that doesn't mean that they're going to love it. And that doesn't mean the people who are American want to stay if we don't continue to invest and get better. So we have a lot of issues in this thing. And I'm looking at the things that are on mainstream media, headline news. They're not the things that are actually making our country great. They're the things that are holding our country back. And so, if we want to talk about transgenderism, if we want to talk about who's a boy and who's a girl, and we want to talk about derailments and, seeing our supplies and our resources dwindle, that doesn't look like in 50 years a great country to me. It doesn't look like the world dominant country that we would expect to be. So, it's not that we're complaining, we're addressing things that we're seeing. And we're also actually monitoring the things that we're hearing. And it doesn't look like a good situation, especially with the current leadership that we have. So I just wanted to say that to Jonathan. I appreciate his views and wanting to be inclusive. However, it just becomes absolutely comical that these issues are taking the forefront and they demand and command us, our attention and our effort and our sympathy, when we should be thinking about a way to actually manufacture back in the United States, actually find a way to make things back in the United States instead of China, because we're importing so much and it's so cheap from China. We're making China rich. And frankly, you know what? They're a
Storm.
superpower. So I'll just land with this.
If
I just don't understand why we continue to have people bombard us with things that are not normal and then expect us to feel like they're normal. If it's not normal, call it what it is. We can't speak our minds. We are in a country where we have free speech. Let's focus on the things that make us great, not the things to make others great when it's especially something where they demand and command our attention. I'll leave it there. Somebody wanted to jump in.
So
if you want
Storm,
to steal, New York's much better than Dubai. Otherwise, we'll chop
Well,
up your
one
head.
second, Jonathan.
appreciate you. Thank you very much. Hey, Storm, are you essentially saying that transgenderism, in your opinion, is not normal?
What he's saying is we have 1,700 train wrecks a year, a month in this country. I think it's a month now. But what do we hear about? There's more interest in solving the trans problem in this country and making people aware of it than accidents that can kill our city. And like, why do we keep going to the smaller and smaller and smaller problem rather than taking on our infrastructure? Railroads made this country great, and now they've had what, 3 or 4 accidents in the last 3 or 4 weeks in just in one state. They've also had them in South Carolina, had them in Houston, Texas in the last 3 weeks. You got airlines that are shutting down 3 times this year. The entire infrastructure, all the terminals in the United States were shut down because of software problems. You guys are talking about fusion development and technology development, but we can't figure out how to manufacture in America cheaper than we can in China. Why not? We got all the smartest people in the world. We can't figure out how to manufacture cheaper than any other place in the world. And I had a guy tell me tonight that energy is going to basically be free. Tyler, how can energy become free and we can't manufacture here in the U.S.? And Tyler's still
Grant,
down there, so maybe he knows.
on 15 seconds to Nelson, your question. I don't think it's normal. I do believe there's a movement to try and normalize it. And why are they trying to normalize it if it's not normal? Because it's such a small percentage of the population, it makes me wonder, why is it being forced down our throats, and why do we have to accept it, especially if it's getting into our children's schools? That doesn't make sense to me.
Most people don't want to know
Interesting
that.
perspective. I mean, is there anybody on stage that disagrees with that? Anybody on the stage right now? Oh, wow. So you all agree with that. Okay, cool. Let's keep it going. Mace, let's go.
Yeah. So let's go to Nathan, and then I know Jonathan wanted to chime in after that. So go ahead, Nathan.
Hey, thanks, Maze. Hey, Grant, Nelson, Storm, you're spot on, and Big Head and Jonathan, you use with the hair. You're absolutely right. That's in the S&P Supply Chain Global. They're talking about reshore and nearshore, and you're spot on. You totally stole my thunder, but kudos. You know your shit. Shit. You guys are wild, man. It's my first time hanging out in here, really. So I was in a space yesterday, and I was talking about the derailment, and I was laying out what happened, and I kept on getting kicked out of the room. Like, the host wasn't doing it; it just kept dropping me. So I'll just say this: that everyone's eyes were in the sky when that happened, and it wasn't until so many days later, after the Congress hearing with Tech Partnership, the power went out in Congress. So there was a lot of distraction going on with other things like sending money and weapons to Ukraine during that whole time. So he was operating under the shadow, and also one I am just came out a little earlier, proving that these shots were in fact a lab study. We are all lab rats. They created it intentionally to test us out.
That's something that Frank broke today.
Yeah, I just came from his face before coming here.
Okay, I gotta check my messages. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate you. Excellent points.
That's one of your friends as well, right, Maze?
That's one of my friends. Yes,
Oh,
I will
yeah.
claim him. He's definitely one of my friends.
Oh, I thought
But
so.
the other ones, I can't take any credit.
I thought so. All right, let's go. Rock out.
Yeah, man. I definitely will claim him. Okay, Jonathan, jump in, and then we'll go to Kevin because it's good to see you too, my Kevin Trump. But go ahead, Jonathan.
Cool. Thanks, Maze. So two things. One, Grant was talking about, we're talking about fusion energy, but we can't even get the railroads right, right? Like, I think those are good questions to ask. Like, why are we the most energy rich nation geographically in the world, yet we do not create and export the most amount of oil? We're not even energy independent. There are forces that are keeping us this way, or perhaps trying to make us a weaker standing in the world. I don't know. Maybe it's the same people that are derailing the trains. But the main topic here was the transgenderism. So I don't care what anybody does. It does not matter. But there is a reason. What is a threat? What is the biggest threat throughout all of history to any existing power structure, whether it's a government, a regime of some sort? What's the biggest threat to them? It's young men, and it's young men gathering together to overthrow, whether it's a government, of whatever power structure there is. That is the biggest threat to any existing power, is men gathering together and doing a revolution. And so perhaps if you could get them all to turn into women, to weaken themselves, whether it's through our foods and our testosterone levels plummeting, whether it's chopping off our penises, whatever it is, which is a crazy thing to say nowadays, overall, it's a very small amount of people, but perhaps they're trying to shove it in our face and down our throat, because whatever this existing power structure is that we've talked about so many times now, it's hard to pinpoint exactly who it is and who's exactly behind it. I think it's these families and who really run the world the last, few decades or hundreds of years. Which, by the way, this is the last every 500 years there's a family that is the head of the monetary system, and it just so happens we're right now at the end of the 500-year term that the Rothschilds have owned the financial structure, basically when they took over from the Italian family or whatever it is. But I think the transgenderism is actually a strategic plan to prevent us revolting and creating a revolution and doing something that would put a threat to the existing power structure, whatever that is. And I think that's always, you're seeing that all across the West, because it is strange. We'd be hyper focusing on a very small, minute part of the population. If you want a transgenderism month, that's fine. But why are you talking to a 4 and 5-year-old boy about turning into a girl and then putting surgery onto them? I think it's perhaps a strategic thing to prevent a threat of a revolution of young men, which historically has caused a big problem for existing power structures. That's just my opinion on it.
Yo, Jonathan, what if I told you that the the funding for the transgender and all of this, it's all a part of the what is it, Planned Parenthood planning.
Here
It's
we go.
all,
I'll call
I'm
cap on that.
telling
I'll
you.
call
Here we
cap on that.
go. Here we go.
I'm
Bill
telling,
Gates,
I
that's
have
Bill
all the
Gates Sr.
receipts. My
Yeah,
point is,
yeah,
I have all the receipts, the Trilateral Commission and
yep.
all of the folks
The
that are
Council of
funding.
Foreign
But
Relations.
that's
It's
my
all the
point.
same people.
I was shocked by this, Nelson. I'm letting you know that I didn't even think that. I hesitated to think that this could potentially be some sort of eugenics type of movement, but that's exactly what it is. This is a ploy to make people not care about having kids and to kind of like move away from the nuclear family. And that's in the social contract too. I'm just saying. This is
So,
still snorkeling level, just so you know.
so I would say to that, Maze, that
Yeah,
means that you're
when you
doing
have
your
a
own
strong,
research.
when you have a strong, confident population of males, particularly males,
and then a woman at home saying, "Go get them, daddy." When you got a woman at home encouraging a strong man to go protect and defend, you're a dangerous group of people. Particularly when there's 330 million of them that are fully fucking armed. So what do? First thing you do is get them to feel bad about themselves. Feel oh, something's wrong with me. As young as a child, I brought up this Ritalin issue, this labeling that started in the last 20 years. Kids having problems, obsessive compulsive, ADD, ADHD, bipolar, depressant, manic depressant, all these fucking psychiatric labels that have zero tests to validate. There's not one test to validate any of these things. No blood tests, no hair tests, no biological tests, zero tests. These kids have been labeled broken, diseased, ailed, mental illnesses. Mental illnesses is the new, hey, cover your shit. You got a mental illness, okay? And so these kids now, they're going to be scared to pick up arms because maybe they're sick, maybe there's something wrong with them, rather than, hey, you're a strong man, go defend your wife, go defend your children.
Grant, I don't know what mental pills you took before you came on the stage tonight.
I don't take pills. I don't take pills.
because
they tried to put me on this stuff. I'm talking from personal experience. They said that I run too hard. Listen to this. The two psychologists and a psychiatrist said that I'm too ambitious, that I suffer from overachievement disorder. that was $4 billion ago. Eat my dick.
Wow.
Got you, bitch. Can we give him a round of applause for overcoming overachievement?
I just want to discuss the labeling thing.
That's a personal experience. That's the personal experience, and I know other people that are having that done to them. Do that for 20 or 30 years to generations of kids. Okay, one of the reasons we took our kids out of the school system is so they're not around other kids that are being medicated for nothing. By the way, medicated for no reason except that they're children.
I just want to say one thing about the whole labeling. If you don't mind, I'll be very, very quick. We lived before in the 1990s and 2000s. When we were in schools, they were told us you're not supposed to label anybody. You're supposed to love everyone. We're all the same. And now we're all fighting for labels, and there are new labels every single day. And when it comes to the medication part, Grant, they keep telling me that I have to put my son on medication. He's got autism, and I refused. And they said just try it. So I was like, okay, fine, let's see. I did it for maybe a week because he was not able to function in school. And I was pushed, and his father is 100% liberal. So he was like, let's do it. Fine. I accepted it for a week, and then I took it out because he became a zombie. I was like, screw that. He's not taking any medication. Anyone who tells me he is, I'll just say, yeah, he's medicated, but he's not. Through food, through routine, through all of that, the kids can get it. And you're right, they medicate these kids because they don't want to deal with them. They're in schools that don't have a clue how to teach them. 60, 70-year-old curriculums that have not changed. The way of teaching has not changed. And this is coming from an educator, right? I taught for 18 years. I know what it is to be in a classroom. And it's not, abstract learning is not learning anymore. It doesn't work that way. Kids need to be involved in their learning. Their learning is to evolve. It has to be part of what's happening around them right now. So if we're bombarding them with nonsense, how are they actually learning, right? So 100% the labeling. And kids are so sensitive now. And you say anything you say to them, everyone's having to go write a freaking poem about it because they feel so uncomfortable over whatever it is you said. There's no thick skin anymore. You don't have these men growing up to be men. Everyone just wants to feel like they're needed. They're all victims. This whole victimhood of whatever it is that's happening around them is too much. So 100% agree with you. Medications, throw that away. And the schooling 100% needs to change. And labeling, enough freaking labeling. Just move the fuck on. That's all I got to say. Thanks, Rasha. I agree with you 100%. To whom it may concern, jump in. Welcome.
Hey, Maze. Thank you for bringing me up.
Hey.
Before I touch on the subject, I just want to pump Grant's tires for a sec. Man, I've been trying to say thank you for a long time. We met in 2020 Vegas at the Bill Austin Hearing Expo, and the financial advice you gave me, I put to use, and it changed my life financially, and I'm set with my wife and my kids, and I want to thank you for that, brother. Seriously.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
That was huge that day. That was huge, if you recall. To touch upon the subject at hand, this whole conversation is embarrassing when we're talking about, this very, very small group. Let people do whatever they want. Yes, stop pushing it in people's faces, but at the end of the day, it's just a complete distraction. And I think everybody knows that. The fact that, like, I'm scrolling on Twitter or other social platforms, and all I see grown men talking about these issues, and it's at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to prioritizing what really matters. And if you look at civilization or the beginning, what we're supposed to do as humanity is further civilization, further society. And Maze knows that I'm a big fan of a man by the name of Jock Fresno. So we got a bunch of people in the room, and I'm not trying to sidetrack or hijack the topic, but Jock Fresno was a man who was a futurist. He passed away, and he started the Venus Project. It was creating a society that's based on computers running it, and experts as a technocratic society. And right now, we have politicians that are telling experts what to do, and it's vice versa. We need the experts. That's why I like G, and I like people like Nelson on stage. These are experts in their field. If you look back in just like 20, 40, 100 years ago, a bunch of men getting together with a hammer and building society from the ground up. This is what we need to be focusing on. This is how we advance society. And then when it comes to, like, I think it was Dan talking about China. China owes us everything. If you think about it logically, they're overpopulated in a sense of what to do. They have nothing to do. We keep them busy. And with that, I'm done. We keep them busy, realistically.
Thank you. Somebody threw out a stat. I don't know how accurate it is about how they've had the largest portion of people move into middle class. I guess the middle class, I don't know what that standard or what that number is, in the past 10 years, I believe. And it makes sense,
Yeah,
with
over 300 million people have moved into the middle class in China in the last 20 years.
thank you for verifying that stat. And you know what? I would say Jonathan is also an expert in what he does, as long as he's not talking politics. So let's go to Kat Black. You've been very patient. And then she was up here before you, Kevin. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to her first and then come over to you. Go ahead, Kat Black.
I'm sorry, I had a struggle to get the microphone on. I appreciate the conversation and everything that people were saying, but some of it seems to me like to be a dream, you know, because of the situation I think that we're in right now is so urgent. And my perspective is that we are dealing with a bunch of criminals, and until those are cleaned out, um, anything that we go to try to implement is just going to fall if it's against the goal of the criminals. Um, so I think it's important that we continue to expose, and just basically bring everything that we can to the forefront. One thing I wanted to mention is a statistic I recently came across. 70% of young men aged 17 to 24 are unfit for military service. And they said that the reasons were, number one was obesity, number two was behavioral problems, mental health problems, and criminality. So those are the drafting age folks. Um, there were 60%, or I forget what the statistic was, being below meeting recruitment levels. So we don't really have much of a military um, force, and not a lot of perspective to gain. I don't see a lot of the other generations is going to raise their arm and go volunteer. Who's going to volunteer to fight in anything that
robots in the future.
that this group is,
Hold on
involved
one second,
in?
Cat Black. Grant, are you trying to say something? It's muffled.
There's going to be robots in the future. That won't be a problem.
Well, that's good if it happens quick, because in my view, it looks to me like the people making our national security decisions are the same people that have had us in big, ugly messes for
Agreed.
years, and I really don't trust their judgment moving forward. With this Ukraine situation, there's a lot of things that we can accomplish. You say robots, free energy, and all the rest of it. But I think we're kind of down to the wire here. I think things are happening that we don't have a whole lot of time to do all those things. I think we need to expose the criminals for what they are and continue trying to bring attention to the things that we're doing regarding the social stuff, and then I'll shut up. Um, the biggest problem I see with that is most of our society is running around nowadays with unhealthy boundaries. They are sexually inappropriate around children, and that has been proven to be harmful. So I don't even know why we're having to have the conversation other than we have butchers and liars running about destroying our youth. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for that, nor do I have any sympathy for anybody whose behavior is sexually inappropriate around children. And I'll stop. Thank you for letting me
Yeah,
speak,
yeah.
and
You
I'll
know,
land
just
my balloon.
yeah. It's crazy, man. How do you know that you're not on the side of the criminals? Like everything you said is the criminals are this, that. How do you know that you're not siding with the criminals?
What?
Well, because I've watched behaviors over time and behavior patterns. And I'm in the United States. I'm not addressing this to people in other countries because I don't know what their element is. But I know in the United States, and I have watched Joe Biden for many years. I have watched Ned Price, Jake Sullivan, all of them, the people that are involved in this. Um, and I believe that they are criminals. Now, how do I know I'm not on the side of them? Because I'm not advocating forced mandate injections of vaccines or stealing anybody's liberties. I mean, that's kind of how I know.
That was a
I did,
great rebuttal, Cat Black.
Maze. I did want to say something really quick.
Go ahead.
When I was in San Diego,
Anthony,
just so you guys know,
Anthony, I just want to address the middle class in China. Just so you guys know, the income level in China to be in the middle class, upper middle class, is $18,000 a year. Just so you guys know, that's the upper middle class. That's what it takes to get in there. Go ahead, Anthony.
I did want to say this. When I was at MCRD San Diego to train U.S. Marines, we were discharging service members that had a history of ADD. So just so you guys know, if there's medication, and even if the guy was physically fit, the person is physically fit to be a U.S. Marine. We were discharging them if they had a history of taking mental health medication, ADD, ADHD. We were discharging those people for that. And and I'll share this. The reason why I say this is because in 1987, they were trying to put me on medication, and my mother said that they're not going to give me medication, and I wouldn't have been able to serve if I would have had a history of taking pills. So from 2004 to 2007, I was in San Diego training U.S. Marines. And from 2010 to 2014, we were discharging anyone who had a history of taking mental health medication. But then what's ironic to me is that a transgender can serve. What sense does that make? I don't. I have a conflict with that personally. Okay, you a person that's physically fit that has went in the Marine Corps and passed the physical training, able to shoot, run, and pass all of the scientific tests. We were discharging service members by looking at their history record from high school for having taking ADD medication. However, a person can enlist in the armed forces with that's a transgender. That's a that right there to me is a conflict. I don't understand how we could how we're in this position that we're in today, and we're having a recruiting issue, right now. The U.S. Armed Forces is having an issue with retaining service members. So just know when your medical doctor says that your kid is to be medicated, they eliminate themselves for serving in the armed forces. Just know that when they put them on medication and they document it, based off of my experience with 8 years of making U.S. Marines.
Thank you for adding that. I didn't know that. That's I mean, I
Yeah,
didn't
that was pretty interesting, right? That was
yeah.
real interesting for sure. So absolutely.
And
You don't
especially
sound
that makes
very
me concerned.
interested, Nelson. You sound bored.
I see. I,
You sound bored, Nelson.
is that obvious?
Yeah, yeah,
Hey man, but shit, I'm loving the conversation, man. Let's talk about
yeah, yeah. Sure, you sure you're loving it?
it. I'm shit. Let's talk about
I don't hear your enthusiasm.
Well, can we talk about so
it.